A to the O, welcome to Conscious Crypto. Bassafras here, dropping some heady jazz vibrations on the underbelly of your soft white tones. Let's get on down to it, talking about Tony Robbins and these three critical skills that he attributes all of his success to that I couldn't help acknowledge were directly related to trading, specifically my trading and the cycles in which I am on fire and cycles when I'm just not in the zone. Not there, not in the pocket, feeling the groove, playing my sweet jazz and making dollar bills as I do that. So let's check this out with the pattern recognition.
You know the game. And so the bottom line is you need to be good at pattern recognition, and that's what gets somebody strong at anything. I mean, you look at, why is Amazon doing so well? You realize one pattern was valued over anything else, convenience. Right? If you look at Tom Brady, a friend of mine, he's got pattern recognition like nobody else at 43 years old. He's able to do things no one dreamed could be done. He's got more Super Bowl rings than any team. So I said, I want to go to the best people on earth and see what do they see that none of us see.
That's ridiculous to me right there. He breaks down some of the greatest companies, greatest players on earth and points to this ability called pattern recognition. Now, I first felt the emphasis of pattern recognition when I was reading Stealing Fire by Stephen Coulter, which is all about flow state, in which they do deep dive studies and research on the Navy SEALs, the elites of Silicon Valley, and also places like Burning Man, the Coachella scene, rock concerts, sporting events, and why there's a heightened state there and what neurochemicals are actually involved with that heightened state. What is our physiology and our neurobiology in those states? And we'll do that in a separate video because I'm very eager to pull in aspects of Andrew Huberman, as well as Anna Lembke and Stephen Coulter to create an amalgam of an understanding of what's actually happening within us during our trading sessions, when we're feeling it or when we're not feeling it, when we're winning, when we're losing, and so on. Now, to me, the number one thing I am looking for is certain aspects of patterns, price action that I have seen before, indicators showing a certain rhythm that I've seen before, and therefore being able to judge when to get in the markets and which way to enter the markets. So pattern recognition is super critical, but what Tony Robbins speaks to next cannot be undermined, and I think it's extremely relevant to where I am right now, and we'll see what he has to say about it.
So I said, I want to go to the best people on earth and see what do they see that none of us see. What's the pattern? Then you got to learn pattern utilization. It's one thing to see it, it's another thing to use it.
That is one sentence, but it is absolutely monumental. It's one thing to see it, it's another thing to use it. And Mark Douglas characterizes this by the mind freeze. In psychology, you might hear it as paralysis by analysis. And what that is actually taking an overload of information to which you are then overwhelmed, or feeling an overwhelm of information internally as an internal input in the form of excess emotion, fear, doubt, uncertainty. This happens to me when I pay too much attention to YouTube or Twitter or just the news, when I'm listening to other people's opinions. And so I just wanted to point that out, that there is an aspect of reducing and eliminating external opinions and biases to begin to trust yourself. And then here is the third and final piece of advice from Tony Robbins to traders. And again, these three things is what he attributes his success to, and the success of others that he has studied for all of his books, including Money Master the Game.
And then if you're good after a while, you get to pattern creation. It's like if you learn to play the piano, most people play other people's music. And then there's a point you've learned so much that you're able to create. And I think those three skills are the most important skills. So I look at the areas that matter most and say, who already has that extraordinary pattern recognition utilization? So I go to Ray Dalio, who's returned more money to investors than anyone alive.
Pattern creation. What was interesting in that comment was this aspect of going and playing other people's music before you've played so much of other people's music so that you can play your own, you can create your own. And this is exactly what I went through when I was learning what I've been fine-tuning into my own strategy. And I've actually found that at the moment, it's like I need to get back to the basics even. So I need to return to my mentors or return to like the basics of what made me successful as a trader, and not get too broad or too experimental. But instead, like the experimental part comes in the form of a back testing or working on my demo account and saying, hey, let me run this strategy here with fake money and let me see how it pans out and see if it's even worth incorporating or looking for. Otherwise, I just cut it off. And that's a lot of back testing. A lot of back testing yields results that you're like, nah, is it worth my time? No. But it was probably worth your time to find out, because you do it enough times, you find the refinement in your strategy that yields higher profit, because you minimized your risk and you improved your reward, i.e. you made more wins over losses. So I thought that was absolutely invaluable to go ahead and speak to. And I really wanted to go to one more video with Tony Robbins here, because I've heard him live and a lot of recordings talk about, specifically in business, the power of anticipation.
They have the secret to success. They know the road ahead. And if you know the road ahead, you have an incredible power called anticipation. Anticipation is the ultimate advantage. See, leaders anticipate, losers react. The reason you get beat is you don't know where things are happening, so you're reacting. Reaction is always stressful.
So this is extremely dangerous to introduce, especially depending on what kind of level of trader you are, because you could be the most experienced trader. As I was reading The Bond King, which was about Bill Gross, who founded PIMCO, and it's about his rise and demise. And it was very interesting to me because anticipation based on strategies that are no longer relevant can actually lead to major losses or major pain. And so I actually think that this aspect of anticipation is invaluable to speak to, because Simon Sinek in his Infinite Game Talk also speaks to this idea of anticipate or react.
The goal isn't to outdo your competition every day. That's a finite construction. If I had said to Microsoft, I've got the new iPod Touch and it's so much better than your Zoom, they would have said, can we see it? What does it do? React, 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 react. Finite players play to beat the people around them. Infinite players play to be better than themselves.
That really stood out, especially as I'm reading The Bond King and noticing that a lot of Wall Street is in the game of outdoing their competition, of beating the benchmark. And I mean, while that's valuable and cool and all, but there's also this aspect of survivorship in the infinite game mentality, meaning you want to be around to play. And Bill Gross, he had a 40 plus year, like 4 decades of just being hot shit and working into old age. And perhaps he should have stepped out and passed it on. That's not for me to say. But what is for me to say is this notion that when we are trading, anticipation is valuable, whereas reaction gets us into trouble. Whereas if we see some movement in the market and we're like, oh, the market's moving without me, I better get in. That's often, I can't say it's always, but it's often not the right move, because that's an emotional fear of missing out reaction. So that's a fear-based reaction. Whereas anticipation has some element of calm, of clairvoyance. And that clairvoyance can only come through when you have pattern recognition. Now, how do we create more pattern recognition? First, we achieve flow state, which can come with a variety of different triggers, but we'll just listen to Stephen Coulter. This is an old clip. So what he says about dopamine being a reward chemical is it's not accurate. And we've all changed our view on dopamine recently, understanding it's more of a motivator or a craving molecule. But here, is how he speaks to pattern recognition and how to feed your flow.
Releases dopamine, which is a focusing chemical. And we've all had this experience, pattern recognition in the brain. So that drives focus. So creativity actually spirals. Flow produces heightened creativity produces more flow, that sort of thing. But if you're going to have pattern recognition, you need to feed the pattern recognition system information. Like you can't, and most of us today, we specialize. That's what we drill down in our thing. So the more
a little bit something that I really have to speak to, and it's like, wow, what, YouTube's full of really definitive opinions, and I'm actually going to tell you that I don't exactly know, because I think it's both, and it depends on the circumstance. But in my journey, at my moment, specializing is the fucking thing to do. For me right now, becoming the best at trading crypto with margin is what I want to do, and specifically swing trading, going for the 3Rs or 5R multiples. That is where I thrive, and therefore I can take less trades and I can live more of my life the way I want to. That is been called into question as I've had to adapt to getting in and out of trades a little bit quicker, because we're in a bear market, and so the big pushes aren't as big. But nonetheless, I want to stay specialized and true to what has been making me money this past year and has allowed me to be a consistently successful trader. Now, branching out and reading some nonfiction, as Stephen Coulter is about to refer to, as Stephen Coulter is referring to, is this idea of like gathering data acquisition from other areas of life and just taking your mind off of that specific focal point and allowing yourself to see the field. That is where the value is. So I really like this. I'm going to say it all again. Stephen Coulter is saying, okay, we can specialize and we can drill 100 miles deep. And yes, in my opinion, that is the way to find success. I want to stay truer to myself as a crypto-specific swing trader, grabbing larger moves. And though in a bear market, those moves seem less volatile and they seem to not to run as long, therefore I'm in and out a slight bit quicker, I'm staying flexible, but I'm staying true to what has made me a consistently successful trader. Now, moving outside of that has caused me a little bit of problems of trying to also put aside money and invest it, and also play the stock market, and also look towards currencies, traditional currencies, pairs. And that to me was, hey, yo.
Hey, you ready?
Yeah, I'm just recording right now. I'm almost done though. I'll call you back in less than 5.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. So my foray into expanding into investment management and equities and traditional currency pairs, all of those began to take away from the thing that I was narrowing down and getting really good at. And so I've actually come back to this recognition that to stay specialized is really good. But if you get too focused, you can't see the whole field. You can't see how the market is changing, and therefore going back into your tactics and altering your tactics. In this case, trading in a different direction or not trading at all. But the most important thing is to also stay specialized and stay true to you and your strategy and what has been working. And that's something I'm just speaking to myself right now. When I say you, I'm like, hey, Bass, hey, you, stay true to what's been making you money and what's been keeping you successful. Now, to me, it's the idea of like in mixed martial arts, you have to see your opponent, but there's also a broader awareness of you're taking in the space around. And that keeps you from just being so focused on their big monster overhand right that you miss their inside left hook, or you miss the knee coming up to your gut, or the front kick coming towards your chin. You know, you miss that you can actually move to the right and avoid and maybe parry that blow and counter. There's so much fear or emotion driving us to focus on the immediate threat that we miss all the opportunity. Now, when Mark Douglas is speaking here, it's a way to counterbalance everything I just presented in this video.
What you start doing is playing the people, and you get good enough, you get so good that you don't even have to play your cards. You don't have to look at your cards, you just play the person. That's the equivalent to subjective trading, okay? What you're doing is you're using a process of deductive reasoning to determine who's thinking what and what they're likely to do. Okay? And the only reason I'm giving you all this information and making this point is so that you understand with no uncertain terms that there's a whole category of traders out there, people out there, traders, people who have both the financial and the psychological resources to bid markets up and offer them lower. And what's the point that I'm making? The point that I'm making is that any particular technical methodology that you use to determine a pattern is present that gives you a higher probability of one thing happening over another, until you can get into the minds of the people who actually move prices, you will never know for sure what's going to happen next.
So that's like the balancing act that I like to bring on this channel, is this notion of like, yes, while pattern recognition, pattern utilization, and pattern creation make Tony Robbins the most successful man he is, and Tom Brady and Jeff Bezos with Amazon and Ray Dalio, it is actually important for us as traders to realize that patterns don't always play out. And Mark Douglas is saying, unless you can be inside the minds of the people that actually move the markets, you won't really know. So we have to constantly be flexible and broader in our awareness, so we see our patterns and we have our focus and our discipline and our specialization, but we also broaden our awareness and acknowledge that, hey, I might see the clues, but I truly don't know what's going to happen next. And so I can only place my trade, manage my risk, and release or surrender the outcome.
To find himself in a winning trade, he's dependent on other traders to be willing to either buy or sell at a worse price than himself to create movement in his direction.
That to me is what we all are, really. I mean, I doubt any whales are watching or market makers are watching this video. But I'm a passive trader because I do rely on other traders, market makers, whales, institutions, and so on to actually move the markets in my favor. I am small fish compared to their money. Therefore, again, I can see my patterns and see the clues they might be leaving about where they want to take price. But I can only enter the trade, manage my risk, and surrender the outcome. Based on my pattern recognition, that would be the pattern utilization. And once I get to the pattern creation is still a little bit beyond me. It's in my back testing, but it's not necessarily something I feel like I'm early in my career, and I don't need to get to the point where I'm adding additional indicators and I'm creating more confusion. Instead, I want to take the simplicity of what I've created, what I've learned, and create from it. Meaning I backtest strategies that show up within the indicators, the price movement, and price action that I'm already using. That's it for today, man. You know how I flip. I just flow and we let it go and have a good time. And I hope there's value in here. I'm always cutting out shorts to see if I can just, distribute value in like 60, 90-second clips as well. Cheerio, bro.